People think that wise individuals will have more glory and renown in heaven than simple people, because it says in Daniel, "The intelligent will shine like the radiance of the firmament, and those who have justified many like stars forever." Daniel 12 verse 3. However, not many people know who are meant by the intelligent and those who justify. The common opinion is that these are the people we call scholarly and learned, especially the ones who have had teaching roles in the church and have surpassed others in doctrine and in preaching. Even more so if they are among those who have converted many to the faith. People like this are all considered intelligent in the world, but still, the people this verse is about are not intelligent in heaven, unless their intelligence is the heavenly intelligence that we are about to describe. Heavenly intelligence is a deeper intelligence, arising from a love of what is true, not for the sake of any praise in the world or any praise in heaven, but simply for the sake of the truth itself, because it is profoundly moving and delightful. People who are moved and delighted by the truth itself are moved and delighted by heaven's light. And if so, then they are also moved and delighted by divine truth and actually by the Lord himself, since heaven's light is divine truth, and divine truth is the Lord in heaven. This light enters the deeper levels of the mind only, since the deeper levels of the mind are formed to accept it, and to the extent that it enters, it moves and delights, because anything that flows in from heaven and is accepted has delight and pleasure within it. This is the source of a genuine affection for what is true, an affection for what is true for its own sake. People who are caught up in this affection or in this love, which amounts to the same thing, enjoy heavenly intelligence and shine in heaven like the radiance of the firmament. However, people who are engaged in a love for what is true for the sake of praise in this world or praise in heaven cannot possibly shine in heaven, because they are not delighted and moved by heaven's light, only by the world's light, and this latter light without the heavenly one is pure darkness. Their own praise is actually in control, because it is the goal they have in view, and when that praise is our goal, then we are focused primarily on ourselves, and the truths that are useful as means to our praise are regarded solely as means to an end, and as slaves. This is because whenever we love divine truths for the sake of our own praise, we are focusing on ourselves in the divine truths and not on the Lord. This switches our sight, which is an activity of our understanding and faith, from heaven to the world and from the Lord to ourselves. We may gather in some measure from this just who are meant by the intelligent, who will shine like the radiance of the firmament. Now, we need to explain who are meant by the ones who justify many, who will shine like stars. The ones who justify many means the ones who are wise. In heaven, people are called wise if they are engaged in what is good, and people are engaged in what is good when they involve divine truths directly in their lives, since divine truth becomes good when it becomes a matter of life. This is why these individuals are called wise, since wisdom is a matter of life. In contrast, people are called intelligent if they do not involve divine truths directly in their lives, but consign them first to their memories, and then draw them out and apply them to life. The nature and extent of the difference between these two kinds of people in the heavens has been presented in the chapter on heaven's two kingdoms, the heavenly and the spiritual, and in the chapter on the three heavens. People who are in the Lord's heavenly kingdom, especially the ones in the third or inmost heaven, are called the just because they do not ascribe any justice to themselves, but all justice to the Lord. The Lord's justice in heaven is the good that comes from the Lord, so these are the people meant by those who justify. They are also the ones the Lord was talking about when he said, "The righteous shall shine like the sun in my Father's kingdom." Matthew 13:43. The reason they shine like the sun is that they are caught up in love for the Lord from the Lord, and this love is what the Son means. We take it with us after death, where it is increased and filled out, all within the level of our own affection and desire for what is true and good, and not beyond that level. People who have had little affection and desire accept little, but still as much as they can accept on their own level. People who have had great affection and desire accept much. The actual level of affection and desire is like a measure that is filled to the brim. This means more for people whose measure is great and less for people whose measure is small. This is because the love to which affection and desire belong accepts everything that suits it, so the amount of love determines the amount of receptivity. This is the meaning of the Lord's words to all who have. It will be given, and they will have more abundantly. Matthew 13:12, 25:29. Into your lap will be given a good measure, pressed down, shaken, and overflowing. Luke 6:38. Everyone is accepted into heaven who has loved what is true and good for the sake of what is true and good. People who have loved a great deal are the ones who are called wise, and people who have loved less are the ones who are called simple. The wise ones in heaven are in abundant light, while the simple in heaven are in less light, all according to their level of love of what is good and true. To love what is true and good for the sake of what is true and good is to intend and to do them, for the people who intend and act are the ones who love, not the ones who do not intend and act. The former are the ones who love the Lord and are loved by the Lord, because what is good and what is true are from the Lord. And since they are from the Lord is within them, within what is good and what is true, that is. So he is also with people who accept what is good and what is true into their lives by intending and doing them. Seen in our own right, we are nothing but our good and our truth, because the good is the substance of our volition, and the true is the substance of our understanding. And the quality of our volition and understanding determines our own quality as persons. We can see from this that we are loved by the Lord to the extent that our volition is formed from what is good and our understanding is formed from what is true. To be loved by the Lord is to love the Lord as well, because love is reciprocal. The Lord enables the beloved to love. In this world, it is believed that people who are full of information, whether concerning the doctrines of the Church and the Word or the arts and sciences, see truths more deeply and sharply than others, and are therefore more intelligent and wiser. These people believe the same about themselves. We need to explain below, though, what true intelligence and wisdom are, and what the counterfeit and false versions are. True intelligence and wisdom are seeing and grasping what is true and good. On that basis, seeing what is false and evil, and distinguishing accurately between them, and doing this from insight and an inner perception. There are deeper and more external levels to every individual, the deeper comprising what belongs to the inner or spiritual person, and the outer what belongs to the outer or natural person. The way the deeper levels are formed and unite with the outer ones determines the way we see and perceive. Our deeper levels can be formed only in heaven, while the outer ones are formed in this world. When the inner levels have been formed in heaven, then whatever occurs there flows into the outer levels that are derived from this world and forms them to be responsive. That is, to act as one with the inner levels. Once this has been accomplished, we see and perceive from within. The only way these inner levels can be formed is by our focusing on the deity and on heaven, for as already noted, the deeper levels are formed in heaven. We focus on the deity when we believe the deity and believe that it is the source of everything true and good, and therefore of all intelligence and wisdom. We believe the deity when we want to be led by the deity. This is the only way our deeper levels are opened. When we are devoted to this faith and are in a life in keeping with it, We enjoy the ability to understand and to be wise. By pseudo-intelligence and wisdom, we mean not seeing and grasping what is true and good, and therefore what is false and evil from within oneself, but only believing that things are true and good or false and evil because someone else says so, and then ratifying it. Since such people are not seeing what is true on the basis of its truth, but only on someone's authority, they can just as well latch onto something false as something true and believe it, and even rationalize it until it actually seems to be true. Whatever is rationalized takes on the appearance of truth, and there is nothing that cannot be rationalized. Their deeper levels are open only downward, and their outer levels are open to the extent that they have made up their minds. So the light they see from is not heaven's light, but the world's light, which is called natural illumination. In this light, false things can shine as though they were true. In fact, once they have become matters of complete conviction, they can even glow, though not in heaven's light. The less intelligent and wise people of this sort are those who have convinced themselves of a great many opinions, and the more intelligent and wise are the ones who have convinced themselves of fewer. We can see from all this what pseudo-intelligence and wisdom are. However, this category does not include people who, as children, believed as true what they heard from their teachers. If in later youth, when they began to think on their own, they did not hang on to these opinions, but had a longing for truth, sought it because of their longing, and were moved inwardly when they found it. By false intelligence and wisdom, we mean any intelligence and wisdom that is devoid of acknowledgement of the divine. In fact, people who do not acknowledge the divine being but put nature in place of the divine all think on the basis of their physical bodies. They are merely sense-centered, no matter how scholarly and learned they are considered in this world. Their learning, though, does not rise any higher than the things in front of their eyes in this world, things that they keep in their memory and inspect almost physically. This is the case even though the very same branches of knowledge serve truly intelligent people as a means of forming their understanding. By branches of knowledge we mean the various experimental disciplines such as physics, astronomy, chemistry, mechanics, geometry, anatomy, psychology, philosophy, and political history, as well as the realms of literature and criticism and language study. There are church dignitaries who deny the divine. They do not raise their thoughts any higher than the sensory concerns of the outer person. They look on the contents of the word as no different from knowledge about anything else. They do not treat those contents as subjects of thought or of any thorough consideration by an enlightened, rational mind. This is because their own deeper levels are closed off, and along with them, the more outward levels that are next to these deeper ones. The reason they are closed is that they have turned their backs on heaven and reversed the things that they could see there, things that are proper to the deeper levels of the human mind, as we have noted before. This is why they cannot see what is true and good, because these matters are in darkness for them, while what is false and evil is in the light. Nevertheless, sense-centered people can think logically, some of them actually with more skill and penetration than other people. However, they rely on deceptive sensory appearances, bolstered by their own learning, and since they can think logically in this fashion, they think they are wiser than other people. The fire that fuels their reasoning is the fire of love for themselves and the world. These are the people who are devoted to false intelligence and wisdom, the ones meant by the Lord in Matthew. Seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And again, things are hidden from the intelligent and wise and revealed to children. I have been allowed to talk with many scholars after their departure from our world, with some who were quite renowned and celebrated throughout the learned world for their publications, as well as with some who were not so well known but who still had within themselves a hidden wisdom. The ones who at heart denied the deity, whether or not they acknowledged the deity out loud, had become so stupid that they could scarcely understand any civic truth, let alone any spiritual truth. I could both comprehend and see that the inner levels of their minds were so shut off that they looked inky black. Things like this are made visible in the spiritual world, and that this meant they could not bear any heavenly light or let in any inflow from heaven. The blackness that enveloped their deeper levels was greater and more extensive for people who had convinced themselves of their opposition to the divine by means of their secular scholarship. In the other life, people like this gladly accept anything false. They soak it up like a sponge soaking up water, and they repel anything true the way something bony and springy repels anything that falls on it. It is also said that if people convince themselves of their opposition to the divine and their advocacy of nature, their deeper levels actually become bony. Their heads even look calloused, as though they were made of ebony, and this reaches all the way to their noses, a sign that they no longer have any perception. People like this are sunk in quagmires that look like swamps, where they are pestered by the hallucinations that their falsities turn into. Their hellfire is their craving for glory and fame, which leads them to denounce each other and to torment with hellish zeal anyone who does not worship them as gods. They do this to each other by turns. This is what becomes of all earthly learning that does not accept light from heaven into itself by our acknowledgement of the divine. We might gather that they are like this when they arrive in the spiritual world after death, simply from the fact that at that point everything in their natural memory becomes dormant, everything that is directly united to their physical senses, like the academic disciplines we listed just above. All that remain are the rational abilities that now serve as a basis for thinking and talking. We actually take with us our entire natural memory, but its contents are not open to our inspection and do not enter into our thought as when we were living in this world. We cannot retrieve anything from it and present it to spiritual light because the contents are not matters of that light. However, the rational or cognitive abilities we acquired through the arts and sciences while living in the flesh do square with the light of the spiritual world. So to the extent that our spirit has become rational by means of our insights and learning in this world, we are rational after our departure from the body. For then we are spirits, and it is the spirit that thinks within the body. It is different for people who have acquired intelligence and wisdom by means of their insights and information, people who have applied everything to the service of their lives and have at the same time acknowledged the divine being, loved the word, and led a life both spiritual and moral. For them, learning served as a means to being wise and for substantiating matters of faith. The deeper levels of their minds are perceived and even seen as transparent to the light, with a bright color, fiery or azure, like that of clear diamonds or rubies or sapphires, depending on the support they derived from their learning for the divine and for divine truths. True intelligence and wisdom look like this when they are presented visually in the spiritual world. This comes from heaven's light, which is divine truth emanating from the Lord, the source of all intelligence and wisdom. The focal planes of this light, in which the shadings stand forth like colors, are the deeper levels of the mind, and it is the validations of divine truths through what we find in nature, that is, by learning, that produce these shadings. Actually, our inner mind probes the material in our natural memory and uses the fire of heavenly love to refine, so to speak, the things there that support it, to draw them off and purify them to the point that they become spiritual concepts. We are not aware that this is going on as long as we are in our physical bodies, because in this state, though we are thinking both spiritually and naturally, we still do not notice what we are thinking spiritually, but only what we are thinking naturally. However, Once we have arrived in the spiritual world, we are not aware of what we once thought naturally, in this world, only what we were thinking spiritually. This is how our state changes. We can see from this that we become spiritual by means of our insights and learning, and that these are means of becoming wise only for people who acknowledge the divine being in both faith and life. These people are received into heaven before others and live there with the ones who are in the center because they are in more light than others. In heaven, they are the intelligent and wise ones who shine like the radiance of the firmament and gleam like stars. The simple people there, though, are the ones who have acknowledged the divine being and have loved the word and led a spiritual moral life, but who have not developed the deeper levels of their minds through insights and learning in the same way. The human mind is like soil, whose quality depends on the way it is tilled.